Hi, welcome to the Andrew Buckle video tutorial on Photoshop gradients. Now I'm using 221 and it's basically for 221. 220, 219, the import and install of gradients was slightly different. So for 221, now it's all done by import. So import, you can import gradients, but the first thing to do is actually see an initial gradient. Let's just quickly show you. There's a gradient, very basic. There's 5 different types of styles of gradients that come with Photoshop. Now, I wish there were more, of course, but that's the thing. But you've got all your gradients in here. Where's this window and gradients? So gradients there, and with this panel, you've got here along the top, you've got all the most recent gradients used. So I'm just going to, the gradient tool, that's probably the one you're going to use more often, but there's a number of other ways you can use gradients. You've got layer, new fill layer, and gradient. You've also got layer style, there's gradient, and you've got a gradient overlay, etc. in there. So there's quite a few places where you can use gradients and you can use them in combination to create some very unique designs. So if I select there, you can see as I click there, that gradient over there will change. You've got this panel. This panel is great because you've got all the various groups. You've got the basic ones, there. You've got blues, all nicely grouped together. You've got reds and so on and so on. Also, you've got legacy gradients. Now, if you haven't got legacy gradients, just go to this right side menu and then just go there. And then you go down to legacy gradients. Just select that and then you can bring all your gradients in, all your 2019, 2020 ones. Now, these are not your own gradients, ones you've created yourself. Now, that's not done via that. So simply select there. And if you want, just drag, and you can drag and create a quick gradient fill layer over in the document there. And you can see that via the layers panel. You can see there the gradient, and you can simply change it as well. You can just simply drag over there, and you can change it to any color. And of course, you can also go over here and you can vary the colors here as well. Now, if you select it here, it doesn't change here. Only changes if you change it in this gradients panel. Just to confuse things, it's here. Right, let's just remove that now. So what can you do with this panel? Well, you've got these ones here. These are the most recent used. Probably not, well, they're not your most favorite ones, but you can always create, if you want to, a panel or group that's got all your favorites in. So simply, if you go up here, got basics up there. You don't need just to have that, of course. What you can do, you can always go to new gradient group. Let's just create a new one. And I'm just going to go my favorites. Obviously, these are not my favorites, but these are the ones that you might use 15 all the time. So you've got a favorites folder. Now, you've got that. It puts it by default down the bottom. Now, I don't want it at the bottom. What I want is I want it at the top. But you can drag. You can drag it just like a folder. It's just a folder structure, and you can move it above, and you can see there's a blue line just as it just highlights there. Very, very fine, but there is a blue line there, and you can drop, and that's above now this. And you see what you can do. You know, you can go there, and you can, if you want to, you can delete the gradients. You can rename the gradients. Weirdly, there is no duplicate gradient. I think there would be a duplicate gradient because you might want them in different places, maybe different things. However, of course, you can always create a new one with exactly the same settings and then move that around. It's a bit of a workaround, but you can do that. But you can, if you say you like this gradient, not particularly, but if I did, I can just drag that, just select it, and you can see it's highlighted there. And you can move it. And of course, it goes out there. It's not sort of saved in that one as well. Be nice if it did, but it doesn't do that. And also say you like, oh, I like this one. So you can drag that one out. And you can always move it back. You can always reset them if you want as well. You've always got an option just to quickly delete all of these. And then you can append default gradients. Simply bring them back. That restores the whole lot. So you can delete the lot and then you can just bring them all back again. And it will be put back exactly in the factory state. So you've got these designs, and again, if you decide, oh, I want that one, you can drag that one up there and drag that one. And you can drag that one. And you can also drag them around. So say you maybe use this one more than any of the others, and you just want it at the start. You can just drag it there. So it's doesn't have to stay in that order. You can drag that at the end and so on. So you move them around. Also, you can move these around. So that suddenly you say, you know what, I never use, I don't know, the greens. Say I never use the greens. I do use greens a lot, but just say I can select that group. So you select it, you can see it's highlighted there. Well, you can just simply drag. And as you drag down, again, you can see you've got a blue line there, just that single blue line, and you can release. And then it's dragged down there. You can also, if you want to, drag them into. So you see where it's highlighted over top. So maybe you've got a structure that we can see there from Legacy Gradients. You've got a structure there. So within that, you've got multiple different subfolders or subgroups of that. And you can always, of course, go into this and you can, I say, pastels. I'm not particularly wanting to do this, but let's just drag that down. So it's in there, and you can see now the greens have become, obviously pastels have become part of the greens. And again, you can drag it back out again if you don't want to keep it in there. So you can move it around, you can move all these things around, rearrange things. You can also, if you want, just go there and say delete. Right click or simply select that one. Let's just select that one. Can't see it particularly well, but let's just go for another. That one. So you can see you've got this blue around it. You can select multiple as well. So select 2 of them, 3 or 4, doesn't matter. What you can do, you can go up here and then you can say delete gradients. Now, rename gradients, that's obviously not going to work because you just obviously it's just going to rename one. But delete, you can delete all the ones you've got selected. So you've got a number of other options here as well. Obviously, you've got all the various thumbnails. You've got small thumbnails. You can go for large. Personally, I always like to have the large ones. I find the small ones, especially with the current screens, it becomes so small. And it's a pity that there's no sort of like, let me resize it to the size that I want to see it. So you can actually see maybe a bigger design than that. So you've got all those. Now there's also this option, preset status, which is quite an odd one, that one. So preset status, all it does is come up with a panel. Just tells you you've got brushes, I've got 28 apparently, and they're all synced. Gradients, 329, local, 329, synced. And all those certain. I'm not really certain what use that is, but it's there. Also what you can do, you can see this. You've got these options here, linear gradient, now angle gradient. Well, the reason for that, if you go over here, say I select this one. I'm just going to select this one. Don't have to be there. What you can do, you can drag or just click, but drag it into there, and you can see it's an angle gradient. Now, if I went up here to the right side and I went to radial, now if I do it, just drag and it becomes a radial. That's the default. It just applies a default. And of course, you can always modify it again. Simply, if it's not fixed, so you can quickly go over to layers, you can find in window, double click, and you can bring up the gradient fields, and you can change. You've got exactly the same structure of all the things. Now you can move them around. They're very tiny there, because unfortunately you can't drag this out. It'd be nice if the panels were a bit bigger, very tiny panels. And now with the bigger screens, you'd think that they would change it to make a bigger panel, or just, yeah, it just seems a bit slightly too tiny. But you can resize that, the scale. You can also change the angle. Obviously with the radial, it's a circle. There is no angle. But if I got for linear, you can just change it. So you can rotate it around, so you can vary that. And you can also use reverse. Sadly, there's a number of other features that I would love to see where you could change the colours of all the gradient. That would be really nice. But reverse, you can just reverse it. Very simple, like that. Click OK. Now, okay, fine. Whatever. There are some errors. Obviously, this is an M1 Mac. I assume that there's obviously some issues with that. Right. Well, what you can do, you can now, after that, you've got gradients. Let's just go flatten that. And you go here to the gradient over here. And I'm going to select a gradient there, different gradient from that. And what you've got blending modes. So you can use blending modes. And also, of course, you can vary the style here. So if you decide, you know what, I want radial, which I obviously got already on there, I can use green. Let's just go for a green one there. And normal, I'm going to go for difference. So now what I can do, I can apply it. And you can change the origin, reposition it wherever, and just drag. And you can change the length. Now you can't, the angle doesn't make any difference. Like I say, it's circular. It's not an elliptical design, unfortunately. And you can just release. Again, drag, and you can create all kinds of different designs with that gradient, which you can then, of course, use in Photoshop. You can use overlays, whatever. Also, you can, of course, store this design, maybe over Window and Libraries. So you can just store it away. Oh, let's just go for another gradient. What you can also do with the gradients, they're not fixed. So you've got this gradient here. So you've got your colours. No, let's just go for a slightly different one than that, because it's fairly, say, blue to green. What you can do, you can click on there. So you can change the gradient. So you've got the gradient there. And you can then modify these gradients. And you can also, these are the colour stops. These are along the bottom. You've got the colours. You can move them around. You can delete them. You can simply drag them off. You can also click there. You can see as you hover over somewhere where there isn't a stop, you can add another stop. And you go down here, you've got the colour. So you've got the colour there. And you can just add other ones. And you can create sort of like nice sort of alternating colour designs. And also you can change along here. These are the sort of stops for the opacity. So here's the opacity. And you can just reduce the opacity. So you can see through your gradient. So when you apply it, it will just be anything that's below, you will see. You just, only this bit here, where there's obviously 100%, that it will cover. And then, of course, it depends on the blending modes being used as well. This is another place where you can create a new one. So here's a new option here. So you click there, new, and what will happen, let's just go down the bottom there, click new, and you see this gradient I've just worked on very briefly. It's down here now. And of course, you can then drag it into one of these ones if you want to later, but it just puts it by default just down there. Also, what you can do, you've got noise as well. That's a nice one. I'm not going to go through that, but you've got noise, you've got nice, interesting. And now this is the feature I would love to see with the rest of the gradients. It'd be lovely if you could just go with this. And if you go back to solid, see that goes. Now that feature should be with solid as well to Maya. Because then you could just reshift all the colours. You could sit around and say, you know what, I want different colours. And then you could, of course, click new and save them. Now you've got import and export, and I'm just going to show you that on the gradients panel. Again, you've got a little error there. It's weird. Sometimes what happens when you get one error, it cascades with another error. Might not be related at all to gradients. So what you can do, you can go over here to a gradients panel again, and you've got the option here, append, which obviously would just append all this lot again. You've got also import gradients. Now you'll notice up in this top corner, I've saved to desktop, because what I did, I just selected a load of them. So select load, and then I've just gone over here and I did export. And all that does is select, you can select groups. So you can select that group and that group and that group and export the lot. So you can export that. You can export the whole lot into one single file if you want it in one file. Perfectly reasonable. And then what you can do, you can also import. So when you import, now I've got lots of GRD files, but I'll just put that one on a desktop. What you can do, right side menu, import gradients, and then go exported GRD. And so it's exported. There, and it takes the name, obviously I called it exported, there's the name there. And you can always expand that again. There's all the various gradients that I put into that file, that GRD file. Now what you can do, select that, and you can always delete it, so delete group, or you can rename the group, so you can call it Blues 1. So you got that. Now, as I mentioned, you can also use gradients in other places, so you've got layer, you've got new fill layer, gradient, which is basically the same as the dragging action like that just drags the designs. So you can do exactly the same with a layer and new fill layer and gradient. Also, you've got here layer style. So layer and layer style, and you'll notice there's a gradient overlay in there. And you can use that with a layer. Also, you can use gradients with this. So just go to a shape up here. You've got shape. I'm just going to select any shape, custom shape, polygon shape, ellipse tool, etc. And what you can do, you can quickly create a design like that. And you can see what happens. It's got the fill there, and you can change the fill. You can go for solid colours or a gradient, and you can select one of these gradients and fill it that way. And also you can do the same here. You've got stroke, And again, you can go for a gradient and you can select a gradient around the edge there. Simply just go to these gradients here and you can modify it, go for linear, radial, etc. All the same things, all the styles as before. So there's quite a lot of things, and actually there's a few more things as well to finish. Also flatten that, and I can do image adjustments and gradient map. There's a gradient map here, and you've got exactly the same here with all the gradients, and you can run through these and legacy gradients there. You can see you can create a whole range of different designs using good old gradient maps. And of course, once you've done all this, click OK again. You've got your design. You can always go to image adjustments and modify the colors, or use layer menu, new adjustment layer, and you can then add a layer on top of this and recolor. So let's go for this one, hue saturation. Hue and saturation, click OK. Now you'll need the properties. Here's the properties panel. You can find that in window and properties, and you can just change the colors there. So if you want to, you know what, I want it that color, and then just change it. And if you go to the layers, here's the layers, you can see the adjustment is on top of there. That was the gradient map, and you've got exactly the same. You've got exactly the same with the gradient map. So you can go to layer, and you can go to new adjustment layer, and you can go down here to a gradient map. Gradient map there, click OK, and you can see the design there, and you can just select one that, or that one, and you can create a whole variety of different designs there. And again, remove that now. You can see it's just above, and you can remove it if you wish just by going over here, click there just to remove it. Likewise that one as well. Well, hope you found this tutorial of interest. Always adding new tutorials all the time about Photoshop, Illustrator, and many other applications as well. If you've got any comments, questions, please let me know. Always great. If I've done something wrong, maybe went too fast in a particular area, please let me know in the comments. I can also hopefully answer some questions if there's some questions about various things. Always happy for that. Also, a dislike or like, always appreciated. Also, please check out the Graphicxtras website. Always adding lots of tutorials on there, graphicxtras.com. And also, thank you much.